Okay, everybody, welcome back. So we're at the second half of the day, and just a couple of housekeeping notes while everybody kind of comes back from lunch. Um, we have already put up all the presentations within the InReach platform. So we had a couple of people I know, especially out on Twitter, who are asking those questions. So those are there. And then also just as a post kind of production thing, we're going to split up each one of the sessions, and the video and the PowerPoints will all be loaded into HIghRoad U for your on-demand perusal, so we can have that as available as well. And also, just a shameless plug, we have a lot of webinars and toolkits and other videos from previous events already in our HIghRoad U library as well. So feel free. And also, we are very much a create content based on feedback. So if there's stuff that we're not covering, you want more stuff in depth, etc., please let us know. And we are webinar creation machines, so I'll be happy to do so. So, okay, we continue our journey into the modern association, and we're turning to, I think, a particularly important area, which is on the professional education, continuous development kind of a foray, and how does the adult learner or the modern adult learn, right? So how are we going to get to these people, and how do we continue to be able to show our value and have this as obviously a revenue driver as well for many an association. So we're delighted to have our partner Neil Ashizawa here from InReach, who's going to take this topic over. And so Neil, thank you for coming, and I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you very much. So among all the challenges of public speaking, I always embrace the one where it's after lunch and I need to pull you guys back from the food coma. So I'll do my best to try to do that as well. So so this presentation that I'll be discussing with you, I think it's going to reiterate a lot of the key digital marketing concepts that Suzanne and John spoke about, but it'll be more within the context and the domain of education and online education. I was speculating on the type of people that or the roles that you have or the actions that you're already in within your organizations. And I'm speculating that everyone's situation is probably different, right? And there may be some of you who are directly involved with your professional development programs. There may be some of you who are in marketing that need to work with that other group and do it very well. There could be some of you who have to work with that other group and are having challenges, right? So, at the end of the day, my intent really, besides keeping you from the food coma, is hopefully I could give you some more thoughts and some ideas, right? Because at the end of the day, if there's spaces of possibility out there that you might not know about right now, because we've been doing this for a long time, then maybe you could sharpen your own tactics and your own strategies and maybe your own even narratives on how you could approach that other group, and you could start to collaborate more. So that's really the intent here. So just to give you a little bit of background of me, so I'm the CEO of InReach. InReach has been helping organizations deliver education over the internet for 16 years. So, you really kind of go back 16 years, the internet was really kind of taking off. And so we've been doing it for quite a while when the capability actually started. Okay, so in that time, we've served hundreds of organizations. And because of that, I think we've learned a lot. We've learned a lot about not only, how to help people go online successfully, how to generate more revenue, how to be a stronger member benefit. But I think moving forward into the future, how you could really leverage that program in much more of a powerful marketing way. Okay, and so we'll talk about all that. So I'm just going to start with a question. So first of all, we did a big survey to thousands of professionals out there that do continuing education, and we had a few questions, right? But the one key question, this was the one that I was most interested in for a lot of reasons, right? But really the question was, what is the biggest influence when registering for an educational event? Right, and it was a multiple choice, and these were the choices, right? And so, just by a raise of hands, who thinks it would be A? Okay, well that's interesting. So, who hopes it's not A? Okay, good. Okay, so that's good, right? So, who thinks it's B? Okay, cool. We have a couple hands there. Who thinks it's C? Quality of content. All right, more hands there. And then who thinks it's D, the speaker or the subject of the content? Okay, a few hands there. Okay, so this one was a little bit of a scary question, right? Because really, if it came back overwhelmingly A, then we would have a different tactic and strategy that we'd have to be in, right? So really, the answer was a close margin. So convenience won first. So the convenience of the consumption was the main driver. People bought the online education, followed closely by the quality. Okay, and so one of the questions is, I mean, I think convenience is pretty easy to understand, but one of the questions about quality is what triggers the assessment of quality, right? So we'll get into that, like what would actually trigger that assessment. But that's what's interesting is, so thankfully, there were standards and criteria for assessment when people shopped for CE, and whenever you have it that way, that it isn't lowest price, then you have a market, right? So so that was really great for us. That's one thing, and it's great for you. The second thing is more detail on the convenience factor. So 40% of all the credits come from online CE, and almost 70% of them, of the people who we surveyed, felt like all credits should be delivered online. So legislatively speaking, we have some places where you can't do all the credits online. Okay, now it's trending more toward that, though, right? So for every passing day, we're seeing more and more regions saying, okay, now you could do more online, and now you could do more online. And really, legislatively and politically speaking, we're hoping it goes all the way. Okay, so that's a really nice trend for us as well. And then the shift to on-demand. So, the ratio of 5 to 1, right? Prefer on-demand continuing education. And that is basically the ultimate in convenience, right? Because on-demand means I could do it anytime I want, anywhere I want. And so another few tidbits that might be helpful for you is weekday lunchtime is the preferred time to take an online course. And also the optimal course length is between 30 minutes to 2 hours. And that really makes sense, right? Because sitting there watching a computer, it may not be the easiest thing to do. And really, that's a key thing also to mention, is that we're certainly not saying in-person events should be just completely done away with. I think that there's absolutely a time and a place for an in-person event. And really at the end of the day, the strategy should be to augment, right, and to have a complementary kind of plan on how to do both. And I'll talk more about that. So the right delivery for every learner. So everybody has their own preference. Everybody has their own assessment and standard for what is convenient for them. And so really what you strive to do is try to have a mix of delivery types for everybody, right? So whether it's a live webcast or in-person event, whether it's a webinar or even a replay, right? So interesting things about replay. So when you capture a live in-person event and you replay it, oftentimes that may count as live credit, even though it's a replay, as long as someone's there to answer questions. So that's a low-cost way to get further return on your original investment. And then clearly, when you archive it and make it available for on-demand, all relevant subjects, that's the ultimate inconvenience. And then focus work on all delivery types. So, another one is podcast, right? Oftentimes people want to download the podcast and go for a run, right? So there's a lot of ways you can provide the continuing education for ultimate convenience. At the end of the day, you really want to just make sure that you market all the delivery types, right? Because there's going to be a user for every delivery type. There's going to be a delivery type that people think is the best and most convenient way to do it. One thing to note, and this is something that's pretty important to understand, is that by capturing an in-person event, which is fundamentally traditionally where continuing education came from, typically that's the highest cost thing you can do to produce an education event, is that in-person one, right? You have to rent the space, you have to get the speaker, right? There's lunch probably that's provided and so forth. But once you capture it, now you could basically make return on that initial investment at a very, very low cost. You can, webcasting it is a much lower cost than doing the in-person. Capturing it, making it on demand, and archiving it is really low cost, right? And then now you have a piece of content that you could use for digital marketing, right? And then it opens up spaces of possibility for you on the marketing front. So we'll get into that. Okay, let's get back to quality, right? So everyone's heard the phrase content is king, right? So we've augmented it a bit. So quality content is king. It came in second by just a small margin, so clearly it's important, right? And then the question then becomes, so what is it about the content that triggers the assessment that it's of high quality, right? And so when we started drilling deeper into that, so what makes you think something's high quality? This is what we came back with, okay? So first of all, the subject matter expert really lends itself more to the quality. Major subject areas triggers the quality assessment. Also, all levels, so basic content, intermediate of the same topic, and then advanced of that same topic. I think that just speaks to human nature, right? We all want to be on a path to some sort of mastery, right? It's fulfilling to us. So if you can if you could break out an all-day in-person event into beginner topics, intermediate, and advanced that build, when they get to that advanced and they complete it and they get their certificate, they feel like that was really high quality and well worth my time. Yeah, obviously recent developments and hot topics, be very timely on that. And actually professional growth as well. So it doesn't necessarily have to carry credit. Okay, so if you have a catalog that has courses that carries credit and then courses that are strictly for someone's professional growth, that also will trigger the assessment that this is quality and this organization really cares about me. And as I mentioned to you, it's easier than you think. So you can leverage your, it's easier than you think. I know you might not think so because, but it really is. You can leverage the in-person event and then really to get it online, build a catalog, deliver it, and so forth is a lot easier than you think. So I can also talk a whole session on just that. But at the end of the day, what I see in the marketplace a lot with our clients and with prospects and so forth is that the change aspect of it all, right? So it's definitely oftentimes going from in-person to online, a major shift in the traditional thinking. And oftentimes I hear, well, that'll cannibalize the in-person event, right? And so forth. And really, at the end of the day, you're opening up your market, right? Because there are oftentimes people can't make the in-person event, right? So these two quotes are very interesting for me because when I read them, right, about embracing change and the importance of embracing change, from an intellectual perspective, I get it. Okay, so yeah, we absolutely should. But then why is it that when something changes, we all get a little perturbed by it, right? Like, well, I don't want to change, right? So I put some thought into it, and I think that really you embrace change when you're well aware of two things. One, the threats that are out there that might get you if you don't change. Or two, the opportunities that are out there that are available to you if you do change, right? Like if you understand those two things, then the embracing change actually becomes very easy, right? And I find oftentimes when I'm most resistant to change is when I don't know those two things, right? So then the cost of changing, well, why should I incur the cost of changing, right? So I want to talk a little bit about that as well. So embracing change on going, digital. So first of all, the marketplace in general is changing, okay? And there's a major disruption going on, right? Especially when it comes to education. So there's more smarts, okay? So there's more technology that allows you to have access. And because of that, you have more choices about where you can get your education and what education you could get. Now, more choices could actually be a synonym of more competition. Okay, and that's another key concept here, right? Is that whereas I think traditionally there might not have been as much competition for the professional to get the education, we're in a very competitive marketplace now, right? Because of the internet, because shopping is now just one click away, and so they have more choices, but also they have expectations in the market, right? And so meeting expectations is always very key, and great service, right? So great service. I really want to drill down on that. So. We at InReach have a term called tertiary competitors, right? So you have direct competitors, and those are the ones that are offering the same thing as you, right? And you're trying to get to the market at and capture the market. Secondary competitors might do something adjacent to you, not necessarily directly. Tertiary competitors for us are the ones that set the expectations in the market, right? So for instance, if you have an online shopping catalog for content or for anything for your organization, right? If they're going to expect something more like Amazon, right? Because Amazon kind of sets that standard for shopping in the market, then if yours isn't meeting their expectation, right? They may walk away thinking that wasn't quality, or I don't understand that, right? Or that was difficult for me. Okay, and so that's something to really be cognizant of when it comes to this new digital world we're in, is that the tertiary competitors really are out there setting expectations that you will now have to adhere to if you want to really be the most effective as you can, right? So Amazon.com for e-commerce shopping, YouTube and Hulu for video streaming and webcasting and so forth. So be cognizant of that. And this leads me to a talk about historic culture versus current culture, right? So traditional course catalogs, a course catalog is just terminology that's come from any educational institution well before the internet. It's just a listing of courses offered, right? So it used to be on a piece of paper, and you could just read, and here's a listing of courses. Then when it went online, it was basically taking that list of courses and just putting it online. And so what you found was you go to that page, and you just kept scrolling and scrolling and scrolling, and it was just a list of courses, right? And it was very flat. The drawback on that is that makes it very difficult to find what you're looking for. Okay, and so really, I'd like to maybe introduce another way to think about it. Okay, so if you really think about a course catalog as a true e-commerce shopping experience, that someone has an expectation set by, say, an Amazon.com on how it should behave, then really you look at it not as a flat thing, but as a funnel. All right. Might I say even a marketing funnel, right? So you would have that landing page as the opening of the funnel, and then you would go down into maybe a search result page to find what you're looking for, whether it's a topic, a speaker, a delivery type, beginner, intermediate, and advanced, right? So now I can search for that. And then once I get there, I can like filter for it. And then once I see my list of courses that meet my criteria that I'm searching for, I can drill into it and see the products, right? I can look at the long description. I can see who the faculty person is that's speaking about it. I could look at any materials that are available to me, how many credits it's worth, when is it going to be. From there, I can add it to my shopping cart, and then I can check out, and then I register. I could take the course, and then I could do the ratings and reviews, right? And so ratings and reviews, so that's a very key thing, right? Even Suzanne spoke about it, where we're in a day and age now online where the brand isn't as important as what other people say, okay? And so really, if I were to redo, if I was thinking about it, if I was really to redo the funnel, ratings and reviews would actually happen in both places, right? They would actually be up there at product detail because that influences people to buy. And then once they're done, they evangelize for you and they give their own ratings and reviews, right? So that could be another way to look at a traditional course catalog. In fact, when we start talking about course catalogs, I always try to shift the conversation more toward, yes, it is a course catalog, I get it in a traditional sense, but really, at the end of the day, it could definitely be an online CE store for you. And if you start to kind of view your catalog as a conversion funnel that could behave this way, space is a possibility now open up to you for your own strategies, your own tactics, your own marketing plans. Okay, so first of all, you use it like a funnel. You can track your demand gen programs, right? You could see who's coming into the funnel from where. And then once they're in the funnel and they have to progress through this funnel, then you can now really start tracking on their behavior. Okay, where are they exiting? Why are they exiting? Are they exiting because the search results aren't powerful enough? Your filtering capability isn't powerful enough? Or if they're exiting at the product details page, maybe the verbiage isn't quite clear. Or maybe there could be something you could do there. Maybe we have to put more images, something there. And then, of course, going down into shopping cart, people might leave items in the shopping cart. Why? And so for checkout. And so, you could start becoming much more business analytic focused when you have this conversion funnel going. Also, mobile and ADA. So, as we kind of go back to that one slide, more smarts, more handheld devices. So it should really work well in a mobile way, right? And be mobile responsive. That's when a web page kind of transforms itself so that it's much easier to use on a mobile device. And then ADA, right? So Americans' Disability, right? So it actually should be ADA compliant or Web Content Accessibility Guidelines compliant. So as I mentioned, the measuring your effectiveness, right? The one that the box that really intrigues me a lot is the third one, right? So registration behavior. So you could really get a lot of great data at this lowest level of the funnel. You could actually analyze. Okay, so how many people left an item in the cart, and should we do a promotion around that? Should we actually send out a 10% off coupon to get that thing through? You capture that registration and so forth. There could be things like, if you have a new promotion, how many net new registrants did you capture? Because those net new registrants could be new members for you, right? And you can start marketing to them. But you think of also the power of that. Now you know what content interested them, right? You could actually create what's called user-generated cross-sell opportunities, right? Those are things where buyers who bought this also bought this, right? We've all seen that. And so you could do that. You could also analyze how your campaigns were, how successful they were. If you hypothesized a certain conversion rate, did you meet it? Did you exceed it? And so forth. So there's a lot you could do once you take this approach. And at the end of the day, as I mentioned, that whole concept of space is a possibility that open up for you now, right? To go from just a traditional in-person focused educational program to really going digital and going online and really focusing on that convenience and that quality, really looking at a conversion funnel and doing your marketing and tracking and analyzing the buyer behavior and so forth. Really, the LMS is a great strategic convergence point for that MarTech capability, right? Because if you look at the 4 groups, right? So before the upper left-hand group, education, they typically worked in a siloed fashion. Now, just think about the other groups that would be interested in this type of data, right? So the membership group would be very interested in that type of data. The marketing group, absolutely, right? And then the IT group, what the LMS would be something that the IT would manage for you and get you the data that you need, get you all those metrics that you need. And so, I was trying to maybe give you some ideas as well, sharpen your narratives on how to really work cross-collaboratively with those other groups in the organization. The LMS is a great spot to really start a lot of that collaboration. So education market disruption. So I want to just revisit this slide, but speak about it in a little bit different way. So when it comes to markets, right, markets drift. The typical triggers for why markets drift is usually one of the following or a multitude of the following. Demographics will shift markets. Politics will shift markets. And what I mean by politics is like politics basically determines what you can do, what you can't do, and what you must do, right? So that's how I mean it. Economics. So as I mentioned before, it's a lot lower cost to go online and leverage the cost that you put into the in-person event, right? And then you can get much more return, not just from a revenue and a member benefit perspective, but really like that marketing perspective. And then technology is clearly going that direction. So, I'm from Austin. We have Google Fiber now. We have a Google Fiber store, right? So that's Google Fiber is like the possibilities of huge bandwidth, right? So it's all going. The great thing about digital education is that all 4 market triggers are going in the right direction for it, right? So that's also something. It really, really can help you do almost everything you want to do out of your education program. So, at the end, the members, right, the demographics and so forth, once you do that, then you can really start to be much more focused on the marketing. You know what people like. You can speak to them as individuals, right? That's one of the things that Suzanne said, right? Is you could actually reach out to them as individuals and say, we know this is the kind of content that interested you. We know the types of law that you're interested in. We know the types of medical domains that you're interested in. And so you could really personalize it. And they're like, wow, this group really knows who I am. They know what I like. They know what I've purchased. They know what I could purchase in the future and so forth. And so, those are the spaces of possibility if you do it this way. So that survey, that survey is online. You can actually see the full infographic. There's a lot of great data there. And then you could also reach out to InReach via email or via phone. But at the end of the day, this we've been doing it for 16 years, and these are the things that we've been seeing, and this is the future that we think is possible for online education. So with that, I'm done. Do you have any questions? Yes.
So I love the term tertiary competitors because I help in my IT department. Oh, sorry. I love the term tertiary competitors because in my IT department, we have an online catalog where we sell, dental brochures and things like that. Mm-hmm. And a lot of the other parts of the business feel like they're always comparing us to Amazon in a negative way.
Right.
Very negative way. Amazon can do this. Why can't we do this? And I always throw out the whole kind of budget thing out there. Well, yeah, if I had their budget, we could do those things. But is there other better ways to approach? I mean, obviously we want to do it as well as we can, mm-hmm. but we don't have the budget to do an Amazon or things like that. So do you have any suggestions for how to maybe manage the expectations of your internal users?
Yeah. So my intuition tells me that. And I understand it's a very difficult question to field and handle, right? I totally get that. What I speculate gets triggered in the listeners as he hears you say that is, but that's not my problem, right? And so they kind of leave the conversation going, that wasn't effective, or I still feel like we didn't get anywhere, right? So yeah, absolutely, right. And so then the question becomes, so how do I handle that very complex situation? I think the first thing, my intuition telling me, I would actually agree with them. I would say you're absolutely right. And in fact, we have this concept called a tertiary competitor, and we know the Amazons of the world are setting these standards, right? Granted, we're behind them, right? I mean, Amazon's, what's their market cap? I mean, they have huge resources, right? And so, but we're very cognizant that they do set standards in the marketplace, and we're very cognizant on how we need to meet those, and we have plans to do so, right? We just need to, we're a lot smaller than Amazon, right? So we got to figure out how we're going to do that, but it's definitely something that, that is on our roadmap, right? Because, and being on the roadmap doesn't necessarily mean it's coming down in a year, right? It could be a 5-year roadmap, right? But the bottom line is, at the very least, you can acknowledge it, and then at least they walk away from it thinking, that guy's on top of it, right? That guy understands it and sees it. That would be my recommendation, and I'm sure that if this is one of those questions, tomorrow I'll have even a better answer for you, right? It's one of those ones, I should have said that. So, yeah. Mm-hmm.
So I have a couple of comments on that too. So here's what I find. I'm just going to give you just my consulting feedback. So when I'm out consulting and we're talking about that stuff, I find 9 times out of 10, whatever is in this data, this is like some black box of the organization. Like whoever does certification and professional development, they're kind of in this other world that's not completely hooked in with everybody else. And then I always ask, well, who's analyzing that data? Because a lot of times I don't find that they've done the topic analysis. It hasn't been tagged. They haven't looked at the registration data in context of the other things in transactions. They haven't looked at, okay, for the people that did these things, what's the likelihood that they went to the event, or how many years of membership, what's their membership, pattern behavior. So I think there's a lot of data that just hasn't even been done. I think number one, that they're not understanding. They just want to say, just point the finger and say, oh, like if we had this, feature of free shipping, like it would, again, the magic of the feature function thing. And a lot of times I think it's just the organization getting smarter. And the nice thing of that, you're not Amazon, you're not working in teradata, level terabytes worth of data. So you probably can craft a better experience. Some of the other things that I think are coming out that come out through inbound is that there's sort of what are called middle or bottom of the funnel tools that could be done. For example, a lot of organizations have, they might not have as nice of learning libraries or online portals, but what they often don't have is any sort of like learning plan. Like there's no self-assessment tools. There's nothing where it says like, hey, I'm going to do my performance development plan for me, and you're going to suggest to them, here's the courses that you should take, and if you do this, you bundle it and you get something for it. There's a lot of courses that you're just, really what it is I created a library and I shoved a bunch of stuff in, and now I'm just going to hammer you with email until you take the course, right? And instead of, again, looking at it from that value add of like, okay, why are they getting the certification? And then how do I make it proactive? We do a bunch of stuff even with simple as setting up automated emails to do those reminders, right? Hey, looks like you did this last year, 6 months, is coming up. Have you planned effectively for this kind of thing? So you become that concierge learning experience thing. So I think there's a lot that can be done even before we get into the like, I want to be Google and Amazon. That's what we find all the time. Even with the automation stuff alone can be super helpful. And for whatever reason, that's what just my experience, professional development, it's hard to get to those people. Like they don't come to the conferences. They're hard to get to. And I find a lot of times that they're not up on all the technology. They're not up on the marketing stuff. And and then they just expect somebody to solve their problem and like, give me the people. But it's like, you need a little bit more, so I got some laughs with it. That hit home with some people. Like, why don't we have the registrations? But there's a little bit more to it, right? And I think that's like, there's one of those, I think, where we need to build better bridges between those departments. I think that in particular, I find to be a long, would you agree with that? I mean, this is all the time.
Mm-hmm.
They're a hard group to get to. It's not like there's like a whole association made just for them and their own conference for them and a carve out within ASAE, and it's hard. It's hard to get to them. And
what I found though is that once you do and you capture them, they tend to stay.
Yeah,
they tend to stay, which is good.
They're loyalists.
Yeah, they're loyal. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
And I'd say highly risk averse. Again, if we had to do a persona, highly risk averse, highly not tech savvy, not looking to adopt the latest and greatest thing. It's like, wait a minute, let's not rock the boat. It's not, it's not broke. Let's not kind of change anything, and not always aware of how much the learner has changed. and that people are really doing that. I know we had a client, not at when I was at HIghRoad, but previously, and we did another kind of live stream event, and we were doing it for content capture, and we were doing it for credits, and people were amazed because we asked people, tell us where you are when you're doing this session. Half the people are out walking their dog. They were on iPads, they're streaming it, and people they couldn't believe it. The head of the professional development, which is until they really got the data, they didn't understand how much was consumed, let's say, on mobile. And they were like, wow, now that it works on the mobile, hey, I can learn everywhere. And you're like, right, because they can be on the plane, right? So people are all about how do I do as much as I can with the time I have to invest? And this is a great way to do it. But I think a lot of times that data, I think there's still fundamentals we can look into. So hopefully not any gross exaggerations, but it's a tough one.
I feel like, the iceberg cliche, right? I feel like what I already know about the data, there's a bunch that there's more. I mean, there's more that you could leverage. And so I'm constantly, every day I'll learn, wow, there's even more powerful data that we can continue to exploit. Question?
So this is all talking about people who want to come and purchase professional development, but I'm wondering, in connection to some of the other things that we've talked about earlier today, what are your feelings or your observations and trends in terms of baiting people in by offering these things free? I think that's something that we debate about a lot, is the idea that if you give something free, then does it make people feel like everything else is going to be free, particularly when it comes to professional learning, because there is that cost associated with creating the content to begin with. I feel like that's something we struggle with, but I feel like we've seen a drop-off in people being interested in participating in our online courses or purchasing any of these online packages we've made, which then makes people say maybe we shouldn't make them anymore. And I'm just curious about if you've seen any trends in that.
Yeah. So, I think what you're asking is, so there's a concept called freemium business model, and that's what you're saying, right? Is the freemium business model is luring people in with free, and then eventually capturing them where they understand the value and they value the value, right? It triggers an assessment of value. And then they're saying, well, you got me now. I can't do without it anymore. I really liked it, so here it is. I'm going to pay now, right? Is that kind of the question?
Yeah. Well,
yeah.
Yeah. Is that something that was an assumption you had, but I don't know.
Right. Okay. So I would say that freemium is always a little bit risky, right? To your point, because they may get it for free and then you might not see them again, right? So now you're at the return of the cost that you put in. I would suggest that and by the way, I've seen freemium work very powerfully. Okay. So I would suggest that have you considered maybe kind of hedging your bet a bit, almost like a semi-bluff, right? Where you could give something for free, but attach it to something that is for fee, not for free, but for fee, like a 2-for-1, right? Or something to that effect. Or if you bundle it, right? Like if you buy this bundle, right, and you buy these 2 courses, then you get the advanced one for free. I'm hoping that is an answer that that helps you. But I would admit to you that there's specifics within everybody's own individual market that leans you toward whether freemium is going to be effective for you, or maybe that's going to be too much risk to take on. But I could tell you one other thing. I would suggest that if you've done it, or if you continue to try different ways to leverage a freemium model, and by the way, there's different types of freemium models. You can Google it, and I won't get into it, but what I'd suggest to you is don't make the objective of the effort to be increasing membership or capturing someone new or getting more revenue. Make the objective as a learning objective. I want to learn. That's the ultimate objective, right? Is I want to see, okay, I'm going to have a hypothesis that this is going to work in this way. And then you try it. And then if it doesn't work in the way you thought, right, you analyze why it didn't work, and then you pivot, right? You say, okay, let me try it again, but I'll do it this way this time. Or maybe I'll try a different freemium model. And then you may come to a point where, hey, I've tried everything. I've gotten all the data back. We don't have to speculate anymore. Freemium model doesn't work in my marketplace. And now we got to go to a different strategy, and don't worry about freemium. My goal is always continue to try to learn and move forward, right? And just get better. And then if it does come to fruition and it does meet the business objective, then great, let's keep repeating that. Or we'll make it even more powerful next time. Is that helpful?
I think it is, but another fear that I feel like we have a lot with that kind of experimentation is that you set a precedent. and then people expect it to
Right.
continue that way?
Part of the freemium model is to target only a specific section of your marketplace, right? So that you don't expose yourself to everybody, right? And then try it that way.
That's exactly the point I was going to make. Hence the laser-focused target market. You don't
Yeah.
expose yourself to risk, and you try it for a specific population. Another comment I was just going to make, though, on having to do with this kind of thing is that there's a new model that is coming up for Generation Z, and with Generation Z is, again, they're now just graduating from high school, more or less, coming into, and coming down to probably like maybe 5th grade, something like that, 3rd, 4th grade. And that is that they're starting to do it in classrooms, and I'll walk what we talk. They're starting to do it in classrooms because of the teacher shortage and the time allowed and the amount of material that needs to be covered. And so what they're doing is they're taking all this lecture stuff that we're so used to, and like none of this would we have done today. You would have done all this on your own virtually, and then you actually come into the classroom for the group stuff, right? So you can only get the group stuff live, or you can only get it, and that becomes the fee-based, and the rest of it you just give away. Right, so the rest of it is like universities are starting to look at this, online institutions. This reverse classroom model is like really a disruptor. And so just to be aware, like this next generation, you know, they're not looking at this. They're like, wow, so I'm going to pay money to sit and watch a webinar, and why am I doing that when I can get it on YouTube? Right? So there's a lot of things where people are starting to really relook at the model and say, okay, what is the value? And one of the things that I've just seen this year a lot in this market is a lot of work on pricing just as a whole. So we just did some stuff on pricing. There's a couple of really great presentations out there on pricing. And one of the pieces is that associations have long made pricing, like they've based their pricing strategy on recovering cost. That's been it. Like, I'm going to have to charge for continuous education or whatever because it costs me $500 to produce the class, so I have to therefore price it at $150, right? And they're looking at just a break-even point, et cetera. And that's the pricing strategy. So they didn't really want to do the education. It wasn't an investment, right? They're just doing it solely on cost of goods sold and then trying to hit a break-even point. And there's some different ways of thinking about pricing on that one, too. So I think it's a good piece with the freemium. The freemium model, usually the intent on freemium models, let's take in all the free trials that are out there, or, you know, you're going to sign up for recipe of the day, or, you know, whatever it might be, and you get so much for free. They're not, you know, and then you pay $9.99 a month. They're not getting rich on $9.99 a month. Usually they're doing that because they're using something else they're making money something else. Right? They're making money on data capture, and they're selling the data back out the back door. There's all sorts of different ways that you use freemium of how you're going to either attack a market or come in, or, you know, there's other strategic pieces. A lot of times it's more than just revenue. So, but an interesting piece of that, and that's kind of what I was alluding to earlier in that gating the content. It's a really big debatable piece. And I think when you get people throwing the books, it's when you get into talking about restructuring the professional education and development, things like that. And certification, like you said, a lot of times there's not much you can do about it because it's mandated. But for the other pieces, it's a very dynamic conversation. And just give you a shameless plug, you're having your own user conference in a couple of weeks, and some of this is the key topics, right?
Yep.
Yeah. So people are interested. It's developing. We don't know. I think we're all in it together. But I don't see enough of this conversation in the market, and I think we need more of it. So come on, Rabble.
And by the way, it's actually in Chicago.
That's right. Go ahead, plug it. Go ahead, Neil.
No,
August 5th.
Yeah, August 5th.
If you're in
Chicago.
Chicago.
Yeah.
That's right. And you want to talk about this topic in particular. All right. So any other questions? Okay, awesome. Thank you so much, Neil.
Thank you.
So we're actually going to take another quick break just because we're coming out of that lunch coma that Neil helped to get us out of. So we're going to take another 15 minutes. Yeah. And there's still refreshments out everywhere. And then we're going to come back. And we have to set up because Steve's got some video that he's going to show us. So we need a little time there. And Steve, we'll come back with Steve McKenzie.